Knowledge for Men, Episode 5.
Welcome to knowledgeformen.com, interviewing the most successful and inspiring people to give you real-world advice to rise above the odds, live a life of purpose, reach your full potential, and become the man you were born to be. And now, your host, Andrew Farabee.
All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Pejman Ghadimi. He's held multiple leadership roles at the vice president level for Fortune 500 companies. He's the founder of VIP Motoring, Secret Consulting, and the Secret Entourage Entrepreneurship Community. He's the author of Checkmate, 16 Rules of Leadership, The Art of Entrepreneurship, The Master Entrepreneur, Purpose Through Observation, and his most famous work, The Third Circle Theory. Pejman, I'm happy to have you on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate being on.
And if we could go ahead and kickstart the show with a favorite success quote that you've lived by.
I really like Henry Ford's quote, which goes, to believe you can or can't, you certainly are right. I'm a big believer in life that whatever your mind perceives to be possible, it can make happen. And so I've always lived my life with the thought that we are all very limitless and ultimately just have to find something to hang on to.
That is so true. Belief is just so powerful. Now, Pejman, if you can share with the audience your personal journey.
Sure. So I started my business life at the age of 14 and a half when I became a telemarketer. So believe it or not, telemarketers were not cool back then. They're not cool today. But that still held a lot of value in my life because I got over the fear of rejection really early on. And I ran into that role about a year and a half, 2 years before I moved into the sales role of that same organization. And I was actually doing really well as a telemarketer, even though a lot of peers in the office were doing really bad. Just simply not calling. I was calling 10 times more people and actually trying different strategies instead of just blindly calling leads. And it led to me making $2,500 a week in commissions, which was a lot of money for, a 15-year-old at that point. And so the owner noticed and started putting me in sales and also started putting me as a mini office manager to some of his smaller offices. And eventually realized that I was just a really good selling machine. I was not only making the leads, I was going out making the sales, but I was also going out on the back end and doing the servicing and making sure everybody's taken care of. So he really liked it, and before the age of 18, I was already in charge of all of their offices and had a salary, close to $80,000 under the owner directly. Plus, I was already getting paid commissions weekly on top of that by the same company. So I had a very comfortable salary, but unfortunately, I was doomed to working about roughly 80 hours a week. So now that's awful because, you just get out of high school and you're like, I'm going to go to college, and now you're told you have to continue and work even more hours now that you have time. And unfortunately, it was always, unfortunately, because now I kind of realize it wasn't necessarily a good thing, but I've always wanted to go to college because it was a big thing for my family. So, they were like, even though you're making money, that's great, but what are you going to do? You can't do this forever. And I agreed. I said, you know what, that makes good sense. I was already under the owner. Well, where would I go next? I didn't really care to be a partner. And I really wasn't passionate about remodeling windows and roofs or anything. It was simply an instant mean. I had a nice car. I had a house at that age already. And so I was content with the money, but that was about it. So I decided to go to school, and I needed a job that was going to pay me just roughly the same or a little bit less, but allow me the flexibility. And so I got introduced by a friend into someone who was into banking. She was a bank manager. And so I ended up getting a bank manager position because I was already in a director position in this local smaller bank in Northern Virginia.
So how did you become a bank branch manager at the age of 18 without any higher education?
It's really simple. This bank had what they called an in-store model. So they had their branches inside supermarkets. And inside those supermarkets, what we end up doing is we were pretty much a sales channel for the bank. So we're filtering new clients locally, et cetera, through that little 5-people office. Well, since I was so big into sales roles and I was so great in sales, it was a perfect fit. And so it didn't pay $80,000 a year. It paid almost half of that. But nonetheless, he gave me a bank manager title very young. It also allowed me to be in that environment of banks, and I always was fascinated by, finance, real estate, and all the other things. Everybody wants to find out how to make money, right? And I had some money. I didn't know what to do with it other than just buy the house and cars I wanted. So I started kind of looking into real estate while I got that job. I started looking into lending, real estate, finance, and everything else. and worked my way up from there, understanding that sales were ultimately the driving factor of promotions at work. So I spent the majority of my time selling, and one thing led to another, and I continuously grew and got promoted time and time again in the same organization. I went from being a bank manager to head of the HR training center, and then I was actually recruited into a different division that wasn't bank related, into creating training programs for bankers across the board, in other banks as well. And then from there, I came back and ran into multiple coach, senior VP level positions. And then from there, ended up working as a regional manager, in all of these different venues in banking, where I became very well versed in all aspects of retail banking.
Pejman, just real quick, why are you so motivated from such a young age to succeed? How do you have all this energy and drive?
I'm a big believer that we are the sum of all of our observations. And I, from a very young age, I've observed my mom, which was a single mother, work her ass off to just support us. Always work, like try to start businesses, work for others, do whatever she needed to make ends meet. And I spent a lot of my younger years alone, in a sense. I don't have brothers or sisters, and like I went to school, I went home. I was very blessed if someone would come pick me up from school. It never happened. It was always like walk home or take the bus or whatever it was. So I never had that comfort zone. I've always seen my mom struggle. And I think very early on, I was tired of that. I remember my uncle took me test driving. You'll never know how much this changed my life, but he took me test driving cars, when I was much younger. And he took me to a dealership for a Chevy Camaro, Z28. And he was like, and at the time it was new, today, like nobody gives a crap. But at the time, Chevy had this car, and it was actually a nice, expensive car. It had T-tops, and we went to drive it, and I wasn't old enough to drive. And he was like, oh, I'll take you on a test drive, and he was okay. And he was looking for a car. And so I was like, oh, this is for me? He's like, well, maybe. But I was like, oh, I'm getting excited. I'm getting a V8, 300 horsepower, this and that. And then we get done with the test drive, and he's like, well, when it comes time, like I'll buy you a Corolla or something like that. And you can, it's a 4-cylinder, it's safe and this and that. And I was like, what are you talking about, man? Like, why would you take me test drive in a Z28 when tell me you're going to buy me a Corolla? And he was like, well, this costs a lot of money. This doesn't. So, if you want something, then you got to go for it. If you need it, then I'll help you because, we're family and I'll make it happen. I think I realized, and looking at my mom and remembering that day, I realized that everything my mom did in her life was always to help us survive. And she's done a tremendous job at it. And my story is only possible because of her sacrifice ultimately. But more importantly, I think I also realized that if I wanted something in life more than just surviving, I couldn't put that burden on my mom to expect to go out there and make a lot of money for us to go ahead and have a nicer house or a nice set of cars, etc. Or for me at 16 to have a better car. I knew that things that needed to happen were going to be in my hands to make happen. And I think very early on, I had a lot of time on my hands because I was always alone. And I always had this passion for I enjoyed money. I enjoyed nice things. I had a lot of uncles who were well off who aspired me. I wanted their nice house in LA and I wanted their Porsches and stuff. And I kept seeing it. And I think the mixture of observation of my mom's hard work and my uncle's successes ultimately led me to kind of know that I associated success with hard work very early on. And I really thought outside the box. And I think that's why I was much more driven than a lot of the kids my age.
I see. So you're really pushing for something that you didn't have when growing up. But when did you really break through? At what point did that happen?
Throughout that time, though, I also did a lot of research for myself on real estate and really mastered one thing that a lot of people don't understand even to this day. And it was supply and demand and lending. So like understanding credit markets and understanding how supply and demand impacts our wants and needs. And I think very, very early on, I discovered that was going to play a significant role in my life, understanding when to get in and when to get out of something. And so I started analyzing past historical trends in real estate and what was happening. And I identified a huge opportunity for me to actually buy land and lots before big builders were going in to build on them. So I knew that things were coming up, and I would go secure lots, with builders or pre-build, and I would go ahead and turn around and sell them when the builds were complete. I did this about 70 plus times before I got caught, and somebody told me that I shouldn't be doing this, and they caught on and they put restrictions so that other people couldn't catch on. But with each lot, I was making anywhere from 40 to 50 grand with a 5K investment, and the return was after 2 years. So I had a lot of cash, and that's what I went and did. So by the age of about 25, I never needed to work anymore. It wasn't anything that I needed to do because I had enough income to live a moderate life, not a very wealthy life, but a moderate life where I wasn't dependent on the work I did every day. And so I still enjoyed my career in banking. It was still a big part of my life. That's what I knew how to do. And when you're very good at something, it's hard to let it go. So I really didn't want to let it go until I had something better. And even though I was very, entrepreneurial in nature, I already had a side business customizing cars, and I was already kind of looking for ways to make money outside of real estate because I knew that would come to an end. I still had enough money where I was comfortable knowing that, I could make a choice or have a drastic change in my life at this point.
Okay, so did you ever think about going back to school at this time?
So I never ended up following up going to school. After a semester, I ended up dropping out because I figured out this banking gig was going to kind of get me to the right place. I really got into it early on. And then it was about, I think, 2006, and don't quote me on that because I may be wrong, but it's been kind of long now, but I got fired from my job. So the job that I loved more than anything else.
So what happened? Why did you get fired?
Because I was a cocky prick. I had a lot of money, and I was, a lot of money for that time and for being who I was. And I was going to work in Ferrari convertibles, Porsche 911 turbos, and I was wearing a 30K Rolex when my peers who were making similar salaries, were driving Maximas and wearing conservative suits. And, I had $2,000 suits on, 30K watches. And it was pissing everybody off because I was the youngest. So I was already kind of frowned upon. Two, I was also very cocky and I always had the answers to everything because I always understood that people are the reason we succeed. And so I had a really great leadership style, and nobody above me could stand the fact that my team was more loyal to me than they were to their job. And so I was already creating enemies, ultimately, always kind of being the center of attention, if that makes sense. And I kind of dropped myself, I kicked myself in the balls really when they changed the executive leadership. And so that kind of led to people wanting to kind of get into how is it that I drive these cars? What else do I do? Even though I was selling real estate and stuff. And one day they came in and they said, you know what? You got to prove where you're getting your income from. And I was cocky. So, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to comply, it doesn't matter, I'm not doing something illegal, who cares? I decided to just throw my shit on the table and walk out, get in my 911 Turbo and take off and be like, I don't need this. And reality is I did regret it later because I thought about it and I said, it was my ego more than it was just the fact that I didn't want to be there. I could have gotten out of there in a much better way than just kind of on a negative end.
So what were some of those key takeaway lessons that you learned from getting fired?
Corporate America wants a bunch of dogs rather than tigers, or lions. They don't want people who are very risk-driven. They want people that they can put in the span of their control. So they want great thinkers, but thinkers within the box, not outside the box. I think that's the bigger differentiator of corporate America and entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is about thinking outside the box, looking for ways to make the box bigger or make it better. But corporate America is the exact opposite. They don't want you to improve the box because that's your boss's role, right? And he feels very intimidated when you keep fixing his box and kind of controlling it rather than putting it in his own control. While great leaders definitely want people under them who can kind of push that box forward and grow their business, I think in corporate America, because that mentality is not really present every day, and I can't speak to tech companies, but I can speak to finance where I was. I think it's very threatening to people when you're someone who seems to always have the answer or comes up with the answer quickly. And so people are already afraid to lose their jobs every day and live with tons of fear, regardless of what position they're in. And so you definitely want to make sure that if you are taking that route, when it comes time to standing out in terms of getting promoted, it is still within the confines of what they believe to be their core objective or mission. So in other words, all of your great ideas to grow a business are fantastic, but I think what they're looking for more so than that is your implementation of their own ideas rather than your own.
And that is so true. Corporate America does kill creativity. That brings up a really interesting point. So how can one be more creative?
You become creative when you take zeros out of the equation. So the more money you have, the less creative you are, the more you're expecting others to be creative. But the less money you have, the more creative you become and the harder you work to get there.
Yeah, I believe in that. When you take away money, it forces one to be creative. It forces one to use their imagination and use the skills that they've acquired in their past to really try and come up with a solution. Get rid of money, you'll be creative. Otherwise, you're just going to be paying people to be creative, and it's not going to work that way. But moving on, what are some mistakes that first-time entrepreneurs make? What have you seen in your experience and background?
I think the biggest mistake people make these days is they have great business plans, right? They're going to optimize the world and they're going to move forward. But very few of them have an idea of what a revenue model even is. So you can ask someone, they're like, oh, I have this great idea. It's going to blow Facebook out of the box. And I'm like, okay, well, that's great. What does it do? And it's like, well, it hides this feature that Facebook has. I'm like, okay, so you're going to convince 1 billion people to come to your site, right? And then restart all their networks and everything else and trust you with their stuff. Not Facebook, which they're used to doing for like 10 years now, just because it hides the status after like 48 hours. I'm like, why would anybody do that? Like, their friends are not on there, it's stupid. And then I'm like, okay, so let's assume for 1 second that this works and you can actually get people on there. Then I ask them, like, well, what's the revenue model like? Well, we're going to make money off of advertisers. I'm like, well, that doesn't really work that way. So a lot of people don't seem to have a good glance on how do you make a good revenue model work. And I think they have a general idea. You ask someone to start a blog, what do they want to do? They usually tell you affiliate marketing, ads, I want to do this and that. But do they have a plan around how to implement those things? Do they have a timeline around them? In most cases, it's a no. And all the people I've coached, probably 1% have told me they have something that's actually a planned approach to their revenue model.
Yeah, I definitely see a lot of guys trying to build businesses and they don't have a clear revenue model that's going to make this a sustainable business. What would be your key piece of advice for first-time entrepreneurs?
So if you think about entrepreneurship, and I always say this, to me, entrepreneurship is about innovation, not about business ownership. So you can own a very good business and make a lot of money, but that doesn't make you an entrepreneur. When you change the way people think or change the way people do business, and as a result, create an opportunity for society to advance and for people's thinking to advance, then once you succeed at that, to me, you're considered an entrepreneur. So I think a lot of people are quick to give themselves title when they start, and they're like, I'm an entrepreneur, I own a business. And it's like, what do you do? Well, I have this thing, I sell phones online. And I'm like, that's not being an entrepreneur. You're trying to make a cell phone store work online. It's been done 100 times, like, how are you marketing it? So I think for young people, they should be able to differentiate for themselves what makes an entrepreneur and what makes a business owner. Be honest with themselves about which direction they're taking first, even if they are going to take the latter later. At the very least, they should be honest with themselves. And also remember that entrepreneurship is not about the glamour of being called an entrepreneur, but it's about the opportunity to advance society forward. And so I think that when you're called an entrepreneur, when you succeed, not when you start. And I think if more people realize that they're nobody until they succeed, then they'll be driven further to move faster rather than waste time on all the entrepreneur glamour of I'm part of this entrepreneur group or I'm part of this outlier group online, and we do this and we do that. You want to be focused on what you're doing and understand why it's important for you to succeed ultimately, more so than your own self-gain. That's when you'll reach that new height that I think a lot of people fail to reach. They reach that plateau and then they kind of get stuck and they move on to something else.
Yeah, Pejman. I mean, so many guys are, talking about doing things or talking about building these businesses, or they're a part of all these forums, or they read all these books, but they're not taking the action they need to build this business. So did you have any inner battles that you had to overcome from being a entrepreneur to entrepreneur?
No, I was very driven by money. And it's important because money is an important part of society. You can't really go out there and not make any and then be like, I'm a broadcast entrepreneur trying to make a few bucks, And because then every move you make is correlated to your survival, not to your growth. And so I think for me, I spent a long time struggling with this idea that, I had a job that didn't require me to do anything. Like I was a VP for a bank, right? My team was trained so well that I would literally work 3 hours a day and just kind of meet people the other like 5 hours during the day or train people because I enjoyed it. I was so well versed into what I did that it was easy. And I think that what kept me from actually getting my entrepreneurship kind of hat on and saying, how can I do something that's more meaningful, is that I one day looked at my life and said, I really have it made. I have the cars, I have the salary, I have the side income, I have this and that. And I think a good life was ultimately the greatest threat to, me seeking a great life. But one day I think I realized after I got fired that there's only two ways you can get out of corporate America. And it's either to retire old or to get fired young. So it's ultimately your choice. These are the only two venues. There is no alternative. There's no industry where you can retire from your corporate job at like 30 and be like, okay, I've had it made, if you're working for someone else. We're not talking about equity partnerships or anything else. We're talking about straight up going to work, collecting a paycheck, the same paycheck every 2 weeks, and getting your benefits and being all happy. But the only two ways you get out of that is either you're old and you have some bullshit pension that's like a third of your salary, or you get fired early because you want more and people at work disagree that you should have more. And so you end up pretty much on the street. So I think that the comfort zone was what kept me in my role so much. And the comfort zone was followed by, I didn't have a 100K salary. I mean, I was almost making $250,000. So that's a lot of money to give up. And that's a lot of comfort to leave behind, even if you already have money. You have all that income. I wasn't living a 250K a year life. My house that I lived in was paid off. My cars, I had all my nice exotic cars paid off. I didn't have to worry about it. I had mastered the finance system, so I didn't need anything. And so I was like, why would I want to leave this behind? And I think when I really took in those two factors I just told you was when I really realized that your life has to mean more than just helping build that company for someone else and then only retire with a little bit of money that's like, well, now you've done well, here's a reward. So your life has to mean more than just being driven by simply working for money. So if we work with purpose, then we should also be recognized for our legacy. And I think working for someone, you can never be recognized for your legacy, because even if you make the best bank, this number 2 bank, number 1 in the world, at the end of the day, you'll be replaced and someone else will be in that position. But nobody will know who it was other than the CEO of that bank that became, like that person that made that happen. But the CEO will get the credit in the press. The owner will get the credit in press. But you will never be recognized for what you've done. And so therefore your legacy can never live on if you're telling or working on someone else's story.
And I just want to repeat something you said there. Your life has to mean more than building that company for somebody else. That's really resonates with me. I mean, you have to take control of your life. You have to take control of your destiny and go for the things that you want to do and create the life that you want, the business, the lifestyle, everything. It's up to you to make that happen. And you can't rely on another company or organization to do that for you. You've got to put it into your own hands. And now, Pejman, we've entered my favorite part of the show.
Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guest will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Showtime!
What's the best advice you've ever received from a business mentor?
Never give up. As simple as that is, just never give up. Like, just as long as you believe you can achieve, just simply keep going until you get there.
Keep going is the motto that I've lived by. It's gotten me so far. And now, what are your 3 most influential books and why?
I'm going to give you 3 books that I've been exposed to that I thought really had amazing content in them that people can probably get a lot of value. The new Gary Vee book, Jab, 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 Right Hook. Outstanding book on understanding social media platforms and understanding what matters in social chatter. Other book that I thought was great from a leadership standpoint, Gamification by The Gamification Revolution by Gabe Zickerman. And a third one, a great book nonetheless, is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. That's a great book on leadership and understanding human emotion to business.
Okay, I like that. What's one action one person can take right now that would get them closer towards their dream?
that's a tough one too, because dreams are goals with a deadline, right? So if you think about what you can do today to get you closer, well, act immediately. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have an idea to start a website, start designing it, start buying the hosting, do something. By doing something, you're always setting yourself a reminder that you took a step forward. And I think even if it's a side idea, just putting it in play for even 10 seconds will allow you to go back to it at some point and kind of always have that reminder that it's there. And until you do something about it, you'll kind of always be itching yourself to get up and go try it, especially because a lot of times entrepreneurs will not immediately act on their ideas. They have a great idea and a distraction will occur, but then they'll go back to it. And if they've taken that step already, it's easier to take a second step than to, again, be faced with no steps again and again.
That's so important to just get started. Do something right now. And on to the next question. Imagine you were 20 again and you had $1,000. What would you do?
I would hire a lot of Indian people to build me an app on Elance or Odesk or something. And I would go forward, I think, with the app market. I really think that's the new place, the new bubble, and the new place to be. So I think that I would spend the majority of that on the coding of an app, but I would spend the majority of my time just researching what kind of apps are out there and the gaps in the app marketplace. As much as there are 1,000 apps out there, hundreds of thousands of apps, I still think there's a lot of voids in that market and a lot of different segments. And I think that the app game is all about the marketing and the connections. So, it's no different than affiliate marketing for websites or products. You have to find a strong network that'll affiliate your app, and help spread it out. And I think if you provide a good enough solution to someone's audience, that's a market that can be monetized very quickly to give you the capital to get into something else.
Yeah, apps are blowing up right now. And getting deep, Pejman, if you had to write your obituary today, what would it say?
I think it would say that if you don't know my story, or ultimately if you can't tell my story, then I didn't live the right life. I know that may sound weird, but I'm a big believer that we're all write stories, no matter what. No matter who we are authors. Doesn't matter if you're physically writing a book or not. Every page you turn is an opportunity to write a new day in your life the way you want it to be written. But I think we don't control when we actually stop writing. Sometimes fate has it for us to stop writing earlier than later. Certain unexplained or unexpected things happen that keep you or prevent you from writing the rest of your life. At the very least, though, I think that if we've lived a correct and prosperous life that has nothing to do with money, other people should be able to finish our book for us because of the impact we've made on them. So if we've impacted enough people that they understood what our story was meant to be, they could finish that story even if they read half of our book. And I think a lot of people say you only live once, so live it up. And I think that meaning has changed significantly, because I think what that really means is not just go party it up or take a vacation when you want it, but rather make it count, make an impact during that time you have, because it's very sacred. And the older you get, the more you realize this. But you definitely, I think, if you think of that saying and change it to live your life the way you want others to remember you, I think you start making better key decisions about staying true to your own story and your own brand. And ultimately just can grow your brand to new heights, as an individual, and make sure that others can finish that story, even if it prematurely ends.
I like that. Live your life like the way you want others to remember you. And now, Pejman, can you share some parting piece of guidance with the audience?
The number one mistake we all make in life in general is that we believe that life revolves around us. It's about our needs, our wants, and our kind of like our world, right? We know everything that's within our world. We tend to not consider what's in other people's world. I think we get further in life, regardless that it's entrepreneurship or business, when we start understanding that the world doesn't revolve around us and that we should be the last person we give it about. Instead, we should look at the world from an external lens and identify where we fit into it. Instead of thinking about it revolves around us, we should see where we can revolve around it. So to kind of make the bigger impact of what it is we want to do. I think if you couple that with the belief that you as an individual can really do anything you set your mind to do, then I really think that once you identify that opportunity for you in the world, whatever it is meant to be, that it's to start a blog, influence a million people, write a book, or even go out there and help charities or help feed the poor, whatever it is you want to do, right? It doesn't have to be charitable. It could even be start a new payment processor like PayPal and, like help the way people do business. Whatever it is you want to do, once you identify the gap and you believe to be limitless, there is nothing that can stop you, because that belief is what a lot of people lack. It's exactly what makes people win wars or lose wars, and it's not just in the military context, but in the context of business, which is a constant war within yourself on how to move forward and manage relationships, manage pressure, manage being poor at times if that's necessary, but still continuing ahead. I think that inner fight is always won if you have belief. If you lose the belief, that's when it becomes a dangerous place to be, because you're ultimately working without purpose. So I think that for everybody out there, just know that if you truly in your heart believe something, then it is true. It can happen, but it takes more than just you saying, oh yeah, I can do this, or I can make it happen. You have to take the steps to prove to yourself that you indeed do believe you can. And I think the true belief is very different from what people believe to be possible, which is very different. So identifying that belief, I think, is key in winning in entrepreneurship, and identifying that circumstance that you're going to be able to make an impact on.
Wow, that is so powerful. Having that belief is what's going to really give you the energy and the drive to push forward. And it's what's going to keep you going through the tough times. And now, Pejman, let's ask you, what's exciting you today? What's your vision for the future?
So what's exciting me today is the change and the shift that we anticipated 5 years ago actually taking place today at Secret Entourage. And that excites me a lot, because it's ultimately saying that we spent 5 years building an infrastructure because we knew how the market would change, and the market changing in our direction shows that it validates, our acceptance of what we had done as ultimately as a winning combination. I think that I'm really excited about where we're taking the education model today. We actually, believe it or not, today is the first day we launched Secret Academy. So I'm very, very excited about that. I'm excited because it's going to open new doors for people and new ways for people to share their stories.
I'll definitely have to go ahead and check out Secret Academy. And Pejman, go ahead and give yourself a plug so all the listeners here today can connect with you, reach with you, and get in contact.
So if you want to join Secret Entourage, well, the website is free. It doesn't cost anything at all to join. It's secretentourage.com. Really simple. Secret, like the word secret, entourage, like the show.com. And then as far as my personal learnings and everything else, I've written almost about 10 books. My latest one, Third Circle Theory, slowly making its way to bestseller, is you can pick up the whole bundle at thirdcirclebook.com. And just to give you a quick glimpse, you're not going to be learning how to make $1 billion. The only thing it's going to do is just going to teach you how to grow your awareness and how to be able to immediately act on opportunities. So the whole point of that book was not to teach you how to make money. So even though the title says how visionary creates $1 billion ideas, it does not imply that you're going to become a billionaire. It simply states that you're going to be able to recognize $1 billion ideas and work on them. And then finally, if for those of you that are excited about Secret Academy or want to join it, you can reach Secret Academy through Secret Entourage, or you can go ahead and go to www.secretacademics with an S at the end.com or secretentourage.tv coming shortly. And that'll also be something new that we'll be introducing soon. It's okay. That's it. You're the only one in the country that knows about that.
Awesome. I'm so excited for what you're doing at Secret Entourage. I'm going to have to check out Secret Academy. I've watched some of those videos. It really, it's like a movie trailer. I feel like like something with by Michael Bay or something. So so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Pejman, for being on the show. And here's a little bonus that Pejman said to me after the show, and I really wanted to share it with you guys because I think it's going to provide and can give you a lot of value, especially if you're on some sort of entrepreneurial journey. And here it is.
This experience is going to change you entirely, especially if you've never done anything on your own. Like, you're going to learn so much about yourself before anything else. And just let me tell you that the best piece of advice I have for you as a person is don't rush the journey. If you need to find ways to make money to stay afloat, then make money. but don't rush your entrepreneur journey for the sake of money, if that makes sense. Let it become what you envision it to become. Find side gigs, get a side job, whatever you need to do, promote at a club. I don't care. Like whatever it is that's an ends to a mean, it's fine. You're a hustler, you'll find a way, you'll work somewhere, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if you believe this to be the next thing, the next GQ, the next Ask Men, the next anything, then make sure that you follow through with it the way you envisioned it, not the way the market wanted you to do it. Because as much as I believe in engine the Marcos thing, which is find the niche for the market and then deliver on that market, I believe in that. I've known MJ for a while and we've talked. I don't believe that works for everybody. And I believe you need passion and belief, because when you're on the street, because you just gave up your job and everything's bad, and God forbid something happens to your parents, they can't even support you on bad times, that's when you start to realize that you want to give up everything and go back to work. But if you really have passion and if you really believe in what you're doing, this is exactly how you'll pull through, find a way, and make it happen. And when I was talking earlier about the war, remember I was saying you win the war when you have belief. This is the same reason why the army couldn't win shit, in Afghanistan or in Iraq, is because they're fighting with people that get paid against people who have belief. Which at the end of the day, no matter what, they won't give up. And we always will, unless it's because we're always only taking orders. So the ideology behind it is that your belief is the only thing that'll keep you alive when all else gets bad. So for you to survive your journey and to continuously prosper and not take steps backward, just remember that. Take that kind of leap of faith forward, knowing that you believe you can and you will. And whatever the market does, it'll do it anyways. But if you believe you can actually get past it, and stay the course for a longer market goal, you'll actually reach it.
Pejman, thank you so much for that advice. That really touched me. Thank you. And, always remember that belief. It's going to carry me on for the rest of my journey. And for all the listeners out there, believe in what you're doing because it means something, and just keep going. Don't give up. Head out if you guys can check out knowledgeformen.com. Knowledge, F-O-R, men.com. There's a lot of free tools on there for you. There's dating advice, relationship advice, how to get financial freedom advice, how to find your passion, health advice, all under knowledgeformen.com/free tools. Check that out. And you guys, this is going to wrap up episode 5. Thank you for listening. If you have some time, go ahead and leave us a review on the iTunes. That would be very, very much appreciated. And also subscribe. And guys, thank you so much for listening. Let's have a great day. Crush life.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast show. Now go crush the day, live better, take action, and get the life you've always dreamed of.